In early 1976, the members of Fleetwood Mac were facing some of the most trying moments of their personal lives, and they had a decision to make. Christine McVie later explained, "We had two alternatives: go our own ways and see the band collapse, or grit our teeth and carry on playing with each other. Normally when couples split, they don't have to see each other again. We were forced to get over those differences." Channeling their inner struggles into their songwriting, the band found a way to come together professionally and artistically to create one of the most commercially successful and musically powerful albums of all time. Rumours. The album would take a full year to make, and the musicians and producers would have to carefully navigate personal and artistic differences. The result was a truly collaborative effort, with songwriting credits across the band and songs which offered a transcendent vision of resilience, hope, and the human experience. Hello, it's Warren Hewitt here. I hope you're doing marvellously well. Welcome back to another episode of the series. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we have a new video. And of course, if you're into production, you can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. In 1975, the now classic lineup of Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood resulted in Fleetwood Mac releasing their second eponymous album. The first, of course, was in 1968. While it was the first album to feature the lineup that most listeners would now associate with the band, it was technically Fleetwood Mac's 10th studio album. But what a change. The album hit number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart and boasted 3 major singles: Over My Head, Rhiannon, and Say You Love Me. While the album was a massive commercial success, personal relationships were strained after the band's 6-month tour. The McVies ended their 8-year marriage but remained in the band. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks' relationship was on and off, and Mick Fleetwood's marriage to English model Jenny Boyd had struggled during this time. Despite all of this personal turmoil, the band came together writing and recording what is now considered their magnum opus, their 11th studio album, Rumours. In February of 1976, the band gathered at the Record Plant studio in Sausalito, California. The band brought in Ken Caillat and Richard Dashut to co-produce and engineer the album alongside the band.
On a Saturday afternoon, I walked into the studio and Fleetwood Mac walked into the room and I walked up to Stevie and on the album cover, the names were kind of confusing, who was who. And I walked up to Stevie and I said, "Lindsey, big fan. Nice to meet you." She listened to me and goes, "Yeah, I'm Stevie." What set it apart is because I liked using a lot of EQ on the API consoles. And I just went the other way, plus 12, plus 15, and adding just really a lot of bite in. And it was perfect for a single mix. So they all loved it, and they said, we're going to go next week. We're going to go up to Sausalito and record a new album. And we don't have an engineer. Would you like to be our engineer? And they already had Richard Dashut, who was their family engineer, and he was their live road guy. So Rich and I were asked to go up to Sausalito to record Rumours, as it turned out.
While the band members' lives were falling apart personally, they channeled that pain and frustrations into their music. Dashut explained, "It took 2 months for everyone to adjust to one another. Defences were wearing thin, and they were quick to open up their feelings. Instead of going to friends to talk it out, their feelings were vented through their music. The album was about the only thing they had left." Buckingham similarly saw the album as an artistic expression of the turmoil that all of the band members were feeling in their lives. You had both couples, John and Christine McVie, and Stevie and myself, in the process of breaking up during the making of the album. So you had all this cross-dialogue going on in the songs. The album's opening track, Secondhand News, sets the tone for the album. While the album may have been a cathartic release for the band, emotionally, musically, it largely operates in the space of hopefulness. The lyrics of Secondhand News aren't necessarily optimistic, but the sounds and the music are uplifting. Lyrically, it tells the story of a breakup and hard times, but it juxtaposes that sadness against a light-hearted tempo and instrumentation. Dreams is certainly one of Fleetwood Mac's most well-known songs and one of the album's biggest tracks. The song was written by Stevie Nicks. She explained the origins to Blender. One day when I wasn't required in the main studio, I took a Fender Rhodes piano and went into another studio that was said to belong to Sly of Sly and the Family Stone. It was a black and red room with a sunken pit in the middle where there was a piano and a big black velvet bed with Victorian drapes. I sat down on the bed with my keyboard in front of me. I found a drum pattern, switched my little cassette player on and wrote Dreams in about 10 minutes. Right away, I liked the fact that I was doing something with a dance beat because that made it a little unusual for me. While the song is now a classic, the band didn't quite understand it at first. Christine McVie once recalled, Dreams developed in a bizarre way. When Stevie first played it for me on the piano, it was just 3 chords and 1 note in the left hand. I thought, this is really boring. But the Lindsay genius came into play and he fashioned 3 sections out of identical chords, making each section sound completely different. He created the impression that there's a thread running through the whole thing. The band recorded the song quickly after its composition in Sausalito. According to recording assistant Chris Morris, only the drum track and Stevie's live vocals were retained from the session, with the rest of the parts crafted and shaped around it later at Wally Hyder's studios in Los Angeles. The simplicity of only a few chords repeating back and forth creates a haunting, incessant atmosphere. Dreams was released as the album's second single in March of 1977 and hit the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 in June of that year. Never Going Back Again was written by Lindsey Buckingham as the band was wrapping up work in Sausalito. It originally had the working title of Brushes, since the song featured Mick Fleetwood playing brushes on the snare drum alongside a gentle acoustic guitar accompaniment. In their efforts to focus on the beauty of Lindsey's guitar, they actually ran into some difficulties as he tried to lay down the initial track in ISO 2, Ken Caillat recalled. While Lindsey played his acoustic guitar, we could hear the click track going pop, pop, pop inside his headphones through his array of guitar mics. We were going for a big guitar sound because there were no other instruments. The guitar sounded great, but not with the pop, pop, pop throughout the song.
Well, I know ultimately, he had that big afro.
Right.
And so he had, I think they were Koss headphones. They were the biggest, they were the ones that isolated the most. And we took gaffer tape and literally gaffer taped. I think we put the beanie around his head so his hair wouldn't get stuck in the gaffers. And then we taped it around his head. He couldn't get it off and it was just tight. So we finally minimized the leakage then.
Most of Never Going Back Again was recorded and produced at Sound City in Los Angeles, and Lindsey has stated that the extensive guitar work on it was inspired by Ry Cooder's playing. Getting the guitars just right took a good amount of time. Even at the end, the final guitar tracks didn't match what Lindsey had recorded on vocals, so they had to slow them down. If the entire tone of Rumours is one of overcoming challenges and pushing forward in the most challenging of circumstances, Don't Stop is the pinnacle of the album's optimistic resilience. The song's driving rhythm section carries the track, but we can't discount the brief but powerful anticipatory intro. The piano oscillates on the E and A, with a suspended synthesizer string sound building the anticipation until the triplet rhythm in the snare crashes into the song's fantastic shuffle groove. By the time Lindsey begins singing the first verse, the entire band is in full force, just radiating a sense of exuberance and joy. Caillat recalled that the atmosphere in the studio on this track was one of the band's best moments of coming together positively. On Don't Stop, I could really see that everyone in the band was starting to collaborate and work together. They were always democratic when it came to expressing different ideals, but everyone had an unswerving faith in Lindsey's visionary ideas and production sense. Lindsey, in turn, knew that he could push the other members of the band to give their best, not just Stevie, but also Christine. Drums, bass, electric guitar and electric piano were the setup of the original tracking session, so that Christine could sing and play her electric piano. Later, she and Lindsey would re-sing the song as a duet, and Christine would replace the electric piano with an upright tack piano. Christine was very excited about the song. We got the master on take 25. The song was written by Christine McVie in response to the breakup of her marriage to John, but it was sung by both Christine and Lindsey Buckingham. Despite being written as a response to the breakup, the lyrics are generous and warm. While Lindsey and Christine alternate singing the first 2 verses and choruses, they come together to sing the 3rd verse. All I want is to see you smile, if it takes just a little while. I know you don't believe that it's true. I never meant any harm to you. Christine has stated that the final line of the third verse, I never meant any harm to you, was the true sentiment of the song in her mind. The song is built on short verses alternating with its optimistic, uplifting chorus. The fact that we hear the Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow chorus so many times is part of why this song has become such a classic track for upbeat, positive thinking. There's never any doubt what the song is about or how you're supposed to feel when you're listening to it. It's the ultimate song in optimism and resilience. Go Your Own Way was written by Lindsey Buckingham and was released as the first single ahead of the album in December of 1976. It also gave the band their first top 10 hit. Lindsey had begun working on the song while the band was on tour in Florida several months before the band headed into Sausalito. They began recording it on their third day in the studio, and it was the second song they worked on for the album. At first, John asked Lindsey to play the song on acoustic guitar and almost immediately added his fantastic bass line. Once the band had figured the basics, they all went into the same room to record. Mick was on an 8-inch Ludwig snare. Christine was on a Hammond B3 organ. John was playing a Fender bass, and Stevie had her tambourine with flowing long black ribbons. Lindsey switched to his 1959 Fender Stratocaster so he could be in the same room as the band to record. Lindsey started out playing the electric guitar instead of the acoustic because he liked playing in the same room with everyone else. And best of all, we wouldn't get any leakage from the other instruments into his electric guitar. He could look into everyone's eyes, so communication was easier. The song is also a powerful example of the band's drive to create an album that was greater than any single vision or ego. Stevie Nicks has said, "There was a part of me that was very offended by the lyrics of Go Your Own Way, but the album really needed that big, up-tempo song." Biographers and journalists have loved to dive into the gossip and drama surrounding an album which everyone knows was created in the midst of two major relationship breakups within the band, and additional relationship troubles outside of the band. But the really incredible part of the story is that all 5 members of Fleetwood Mac were fully invested in crafting an album which musically and artistically hit their collective vision. They worked for months on this record, and the result was a masterpiece.
Stevie got a call from her accountant. He said, you know, Stevie, if you guys can keep it together and keep making this record, if you can make this record as good as the last record, that's all you have to do. Just make it that good. You'll never have to work again. And so she came into the room this one day, and she said, I just got off the phone with my people, and she said, okay, this is what he told me. Why don't we all put all the bullshit aside? We all know we're breaking up. Let's make a record anyhow. And I thought, this is like an American thing, you know. I hear this often. You know, I mean, it touches me even just to talk about it. It was so amazing for her to say. And they went, yeah, okay, you got it. They said, let's make this record. And they did, you know, and I didn't think about it much more. But later on, realizing that the lyrics were very painful for them, they had to hear this over and over, and we listened over and over and over, and even the vocals, but then punching in on "You Make Loving Fun" and "Ooh," it's just. Anyway, that's why I wrote the book, because I thought somebody needs to know about this, because it was pretty special.
Songbird was written by Christine McVie and came together quite quickly. Caillat told the Recording Academy in 2014, Songbird was amazing. We were finishing up one of those crazy sessions at Sausalito record plant, and I was wrapping up some cables.
I remember standing in the corner wrapping up mic cables, and she starts playing this song, and I think, oh my God, that's so beautiful. I think it was Berkeley Community Theater. I decided to see if we could record there, but it wasn't available. So, and that's where Joni had recorded. So they said there's a place called Zellerbach Auditorium, which we said, great, well, let's do it there. And I said, they have a 9-foot concert grand there. We'll have it go out to the hall. It'll be sounding beautiful. We said, the crew said, somebody said, what if we give it to Lindsey, the click to Lindsey, and we'll put Lindsey behind the shell, and he'll be on, and the shell will be here, and the piano will be here, and Lindsey will be behind the shell. And so Lindsey put on his headphones and played acoustic guitar. So he was ching, just playing the rhythm, and Christine was playing piano along with him. Again, we realized that she couldn't sing and play too because the leakage of her vocal would get into the piano. So it's like, okay, rethink all that. So we just had her play the piano until she got a good one. And then we realized after that, hey, we can just play that out to the PA system. like duh. So then we played it back into the PA system and tweaked all the mics to have the audience mics just sound amazing. And then when she's ready, she went out on microphone. We had a great Tube 47, the best one we could find, and she just sang.
The song was originally released as the B-side to the single Dreams, but has created a legacy of its own equal importance. After the upbeat intensity of Go Your Own Way, the album moves into the glistening intimacy of Christine McVie on piano, gently singing Songbird. Lindsay's acoustic guitar brings a warmth underneath the track, but Christine's vocals and piano are the shining stars of this unforgettable song. The Chain is the only song on the Rumours album to be credited to all 5 band members. It developed out of several different ideas and previously rejected material. Christine McVie explained, "The Chain started as the tail end of a jam, and we did it all the wrong way around. We kept the end bit and added a new beginning. We used Stevie's lyrics, I created the chorus, and Lindsay did the verses. I really don't know how it all came together."
And that was the first song. It was called Keep Me There. It was Christine's song. There was 2 choruses, and then there was a tag, and then there was a part right in the middle of the tag where John plays this famous bass line, boom, ba ba boom, ba 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 boom, boom. And then Lindsay started playing a solo, and it went on for 2 or 3 minutes. It was such an amazing performance that we had this turkey called Keep Me There that had this tremendous ending. As the months went on, we kept going to other songs and working on it, and every once in a while we try to bring the Keep Me There back up to see could we figure something out. We never could. So we were going to replace it with something else, but it's like, geez, that solo, that whole end piece is so good. And Lindsay comes in one day, he says, I figured out what to do with Keep Me There. Suddenly it's like this whole song was reborn again. It was amazing. Keep Me There was the first song we recorded, and it was the last song we recorded, and it was also the only song that all the band members have writers' contributions. So they all wrote the chorus lyrics, and the end lyrics were, Chain, Keep Us Together. So they did all that, but it was just such a magical thing. It's like it just happened. And I think a lot of the way the record happened was almost too good to be true.
You Make Loving Fun is another Christine McVie song. It was released as the 4th and final single from the album and was another top 10 hit for the band. The song came from a chord progression that she had been playing from the band's early days in the studio in Sausalito. Christine and Stevie were the first into the studio the day that they began working on the song's recording and started laying down the first tracks. Christine was on the Rhodes, which Caillat wanted to really boost. We wanted to make it even crunchier, so we ran it through an amp, cranking it up. It was getting there, but it needed more, so I grabbed my custom box Rick Turner Stratoblaster, boosting the instrument's output by 15 decibels. Putting the Stratoblaster in the circuit really made the Rhodes growl.
The Fender made a Stratoblaster, or somebody made it for Fender, that would sit in the tailpiece where you plug in your guitar cord. And so it was basic little thing with a 9-volt battery, and then it had a switch on and off. I had that made into a metal box that I carried with me. It seemed to open up the frequencies, and you could hear them more clarity. So, and it was quite an aggressive effect when you're adding 10 dB or 1 dB, whatever it was at the source.
The growling Rhodes inspired them to add a clarinet to the mix later. By the time Lindsay and the others had joined the sessions, the song was well on its way. It already had the Rhodes, the clarinet, and the Hammond when Lindsay brought in his Les Paul for the rhythm guitar parts. They ran the guitar through an amp and also through a Leslie. Caillat reflected in his memoir, ordinarily, a guitar player wouldn't play his guitar through a rotating organ speaker cabinet, but rather a guitar amp. We had an extra one though, and I liked the sound. So I sent his guitar through the Leslie cabinet. When Lindsay heard it, he liked it too. That was probably my biggest contribution to the album, my sounds. I Don't Want to Know is another upbeat breakup song which found its origins much earlier. It was a song that Lindsay and Stevie had performed together prior to joining Fleetwood Mac, and was used as a replacement track for Silver Springs, a song that Stevie Nicks had composed for Rumours. Silver Springs did get released as a B-side to the Go Your Own Way single in 1976, but there was a fear that the album had too many slow songs. I Don't Want to Know, with its country rock feel and Everly Brothers style harmony, was recorded fairly quickly without Stevie even in the initial sessions. Lindsay sang her lead vocals in the first sessions, which he knew from their days as a performing duo. While Stevie was upset that Silver Springs had been removed and that I Don't Want to Know had been decided on and recorded without her, she quickly resolved to come in and sing the lead vocal line herself. The vocals on the song are tight and harmonious. Stevie laid down her part in 2 or 3 takes, and the vocals are clearly one of the strongest elements of this great pop track. Oh Daddy is yet another Christine McVie song, this time penned for Mick Fleetwood, a father of 2 who was going through his own breakup at the time. Mick later told Caillat, "Oh Daddy is a lesson in less is more. It's one of my favourite songs that Christine has ever recorded. I think it's a fantastic song. The song is a beautiful, expressive ballad and one of the saddest songs on the album. It doesn't have the optimistic tones lyrically or musically that some of the other songs employ, but there's a tenderness in both the song's lyrics and Christine's vocals. The challenge was getting the correct tempo. Too fast and it would feel rushed. Too slow and it would become lethargic." Gold Dust Woman was written by Stevie Nicks and was released as a B-side to 2 different Rumours tracks. In the US, it was the B-side to You Make Loving Fun, and in the UK, it was paired with Don't Stop. Although it's placed as the last track on the album, it was one of the earliest contenders for inclusion. A haunting track, the song has a dark country vibe to it with these incredible mysterious lyrics. Everyone seems to have different interpretations. Stevie has explained that although Gold Dust references the drug scenes that surrounded them, it was written before the Rumours sessions. I wrote Gold Dust Woman before we started Rumours, and there weren't that many drugs around back then. It was about groupie-type women who would stand around and give Christine and me dirty looks. But as soon as one of the guys came in the room, they were overcome with smiles. We recorded 7 takes of that song and kept 4 as the master. They revisited the song several times throughout the sessions, and the final version of Gold Dust Woman that made it on the album includes a dobro, a cowbell, electric harpsichord, the Rhodes, and sound effects such as glass breaking. In 2012, Ken Caillat told Music Radar, "Records like Rumours don't happen anymore. We spent a year and a lot of hell working on it. Lives were changed, people changed, everything became different. Something like Rumours could never happen these days. A record label would have us shut down after 2 weeks. It's an epic album, and it took an equally epic amount of time, energy, and resilience to complete, working 14 to 15 hours a day. The first 2 months of the album's recording were completed at the record plant in Sausalito, and it took several days for Caillat and Dashut to find their footing. Caillat was used to the record plant's API desk from his time at Wally Hyder's recording, but still struggled initially to get a good sound out of the equipment and room.
I knew I was going to get fired. I was really an untried and true engineer. Nobody knew I hadn't done anything. They just had a good feeling about me. But I was nothing like Keith Olsen. I didn't have that kind of talent. I was just an engineer, hired as an engineer. I set everything up, but the Studio A was so dead. I remember Mick's snare was loud out there, but it would just go bonk, and the sound would disappear. In desperation, we ordered sheets of plywood. Plywood was behind his drums, reflecting out. And by the time I figured out what was going on, that I made the room much more live, I was mainly focusing on EQ. I remember pulling the EQ, opening up the preamp as far as I could, and bringing the fader down as low as it could, because I had heard that makes a more open sound. But by that time, I was only listening to the snare. And it was just bonk, bonk, and I lost track of the big picture. And so we did this for 4 or 5 days. Nothing worked, and Mick was a prince. He just sat there, whatever you want to try, boys, because he had, I guess, recommended that Richard and I go up and do the record. And so finally I said, okay. everybody go to your. Everything was mic'd. Go to your instruments, and we're just going to do it, and just count it out. Let's just do it, and I'll get the EQ, and we'll get the settings as we go. And literally, they started playing, and I started just twisting knobs, just boom, 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 opening up, getting the bounces, checking the meters, and within 3 minutes of them doing it, it sounded like a record.
Ken told me specifically that he was not afraid to EQ. We did some recording with him recently for a course that we're releasing, and he pegs the EQs on APIs. So when he said he was twisting and turning knobs, what he meant was he was really starting to boost things and really hit things harder and get some more tone out of it. In terms of equipment, the electronic instruments such as the bass, guitars, Rhodes, Wurlitzer and Hammond B3 are all recorded directly, along with an amp in another room. Caillat recalls using an SM57 and a 451 consistently for Lindsay on his amps, in addition to the direct input. For microphones on the drums, they used two AKG 451s for overheads, dynamic microphones on the toms, and a Sennheiser 441 on the kick drum. They also used an AKG C414 with a 20 dB pad on the snare. Guide vocals were often with SM57s, 58s, and 441s. Caillat told Sound on Sound, sometimes we'd use weird mics, like the RCA 77, and I remember doing a lot of backgrounds around one mic, whereas sometimes we'd do 3-part harmonies with 3 mics and then blend them together later. Everything got bounced down because we were filling up tracks. We'd have the equivalent of 50 or 60 tracks on a 24-track, combining and going down a generation. And it's amazing because when we did a 5-1 mix of Rumours a couple of years ago, everything sounded great. To retain as much transients as possible without saturating the tape, I recorded it at 15 IPS Dolby 0 level. I could have pushed the tape harder because back then the standard was +3, but I wanted to keep a lot of headroom for transients. It was a different time. About 4 months were also spent at Wally Hyder's recording studio, mostly working on Lindsay's guitar parts. Occasionally John and Mick would join, but Christine and Stevie would not join back up with the group until the end, when they added some final vocal work. However, the long process of working on the album also took its toll on the original tape. Luckily, they had a backup from their time at Sausalito and were able to hire an expert from ABC Dunhill to help them recover and sync up the tapes.
When we went to ABC Dunhill, we decided to try to sync the two tape machines together. We were using two 3M79s. They have a little BSO right on the control panel. We would mark the two tapes where they were exactly identical, and then I would start them at the same time, and then we would see where we were. And we would adjust one machine or the other until we got it so it worked. So it was like we were close. We put the hi-hat in one ear of the headphone and the other hi-hat from the other machine in the other headset. And so if you started it together, they were right together in mono. But as they started to drift, if it started drifting this way, we arranged it so we were able to turn the VSO and steer it back to this. So literally we were steering this hi-hat between your two ears. I tried doing it for half a song, and Bob said, get out of here, you amateur. And he did the whole thing the whole night. We did all 12 songs, I think, in 16 hours, something like that. And he was like, he saved it. Absolutely. He saved Rumours, so.
Rumours was finally released on February the 4th, 1977. The album's name was a reference to the gossip and anticipation surrounding the album's release. Rumours was a massive and instant success, selling over 10 million copies worldwide by March of 1978. It held the #1 spot in the Billboard 200 for 31 non-consecutive weeks in the US and also hit #1 in the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. It was one of the first platinum records in history, hitting that benchmark in just the first few months of its release. In 1977, Billboard, Cashbox and the Record World all named Rumours their pick for Album of the Year. It boasts 4 top 10 singles: Go Your Own Way, Don't Stop, You Make Loving Fun, and the #1 hit Dreams. Its legacy has extended even further and is often considered the band's greatest release, an impressive feat considering their many successes and hits across their long career. Well, Rumours is obviously massively important record. For me, growing up as a kid, I remember one of my first experiences hearing anybody play a song on a piano, and it was actually a girl that was like 4 years older than me playing Songbird at her house, and I was just mesmerized. I didn't know what it was. So, of course, then I went out and bought Rumours. It's a very, very powerful record, I think, for many of us. I was fortunate when working on an Aerosmith record to have Mick Fleetwood come down a few times. And, of course, being the guy that I am, I asked him about Rumours and what it was like to make it, because I had personal experience working in Sausalito at the plant out there. I had done the last record that was ever recorded there before they shut it down. The studio now, of course, has been bought by Caillat. More on that to come. And so I was talking to him about my experience at Sausalito, and he sort of summed it up as this. He said his role in Fleetwood Mac was to be mother hen. So I think even though he was going through his own breakup, I think from what I can tell and from the stuff that I've read, he's been a personality that's held the band together. And I could just see it in his quotes and his personality, that there was an air of these guys and girls, these incredibly talented people, all songwriters, getting together and just making the best album they could. And not only did they make the best album they could, they made arguably one of the greatest albums ever. So it's a testament to people that are genuinely talented and believe in themselves and, frankly, believe in each other, that even though they were going through all of this different turmoil, that they still got together and supported each other and created, inarguably, one of the greatest records ever. Thanks everyone for watching. If you've got any other ideas for albums or song or artists or whatever, bands, producers, engineers, songwriters, please leave them down below. Thanks for watching. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, ciao, tutsins, goodbye.